Hi, I'm Danny Knightmare.
I'm Gory B-Movie.
And we're Horror Addicts.
And we're trying something a little different today with our audio. So do let us know if you can hear us okay and how everything sounds.
Yeah.
So we might make adjustments as needed, but we're trying something a little different. So hopefully it sounds good.
Well, I know you look good.
You look good.
Oh, thank you.
I like your shirt. Nosferatu.
It's your shirt. Thanks for letting me wear it.
Fun little bit of trivia with Farport Station's here. Fun little bit of trivia. Robert Eggers. Robert Eggers. He said that he's very grateful to SpongeBob because now a lot of younger generations know who Nosferatu is. So he said that helps. Can you hear just a little bit? You're in a large room, but totally legible. How's this? Is this good?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear Danny?
We have separate mics.
We have separate microphones, so let us know if you can hear us.
Maybe they were all on one. So now it sounds better. Anyway.
I'm trying different settings. So my mic has a few different settings I can try. I need to try it with headphones one of these days. Alright, hopefully that sounds good.
So, last night, New Year's Eve, we saw Nosferatu. That was one of our last movies of the year, so we figured, hey, it'd be our first review of the year. Why not? Start 2025 with what we saw last night. And, yeah, it was definitely a creepy atmosphere. Good. I do say see this in the theater if you're going to see it, because the surround of the big screen, it looks visually pleasing, and then the surround, you can, hear people, walking around you as a thing. So I definitely say if you have a chance to see it in the theater and you're thinking about seeing it, that's where you should see it.
Okay, so I turned off my individual microphone, and we're trying Danny's microphone. Just that one. Right. If that's not good, then we'll turn off his microphone and just use mine. See how that works. So many options here, people.
So now we're sharing the snowball. We're snowballing back and forth.
So yeah, I agree with what you said about the sound design. It's so good. The sound design, honestly, that and sometimes score are things I tend to miss on the first watch of a movie. I'll notice it on subsequent viewings. But this one, there was one scene where I'm sure you guys are familiar with the story of Dracula. I don't think I'm going to spoil a lot for you guys. But there's a scene where Nosferatu, Count Orlok, is leaving the room, and you can hear his footsteps, and it sounds like he's walking behind you. So it was very, very well done.
Yeah. If you have a good surround sound, set up at your house, use it for this movie. We're not going to get into spoilers. But
here's what I'm going to tell you guys. So this movie is credited as being a remake of the original Dracula, the Bela Lugosi one, I believe from 1931. I could be wrong. And Nosferatu, the one starring Max Schreck. It is also, I think it borrows pretty liberally from the one in the 70s that starred Klaus Kinski. I think it also borrows a little bit from Francis Ford Coppola's edition of Dracula. So if you have read the book, it's also from the book. Mm-hmm. If you've read the book and you've seen these movies, the basic plot is the same. So these are the elements that are in all four of them that are also in this movie. I will not spoil anything that is unique to this movie. But essentially, you have a guy who, his name's different in different renditions, but in this it's Thomas Hutter, who gets a job where he is selling a large manor, a large, really old, decrepit manor in his town to this Count Orlok. And Count Orlok is very elderly, so he is required to go to Transylvania, to the Carpathian Mountains, and sign the documents there and see to it that Count Orlok makes his way safely to, in the Nosferatu, it's Germany, and in Dracula, it's London, same difference, whatever. And then, they show Dracula or Nosferatu shows up, and people start dying. Ultimately, a band of people have to work together to stop Dracula and Nosferatu. This is the same in all four movies and the books. Just the bare bones of the story.
Yeah. He requires a special agent, to come sign the deals before leaving. Which you said happens in all of them, so that's just kind of the setup premise of what we got going on here.
Who that person is, it varies depending on the story, but essentially that's what happens. And in this one, it's Thomas Hutter whose job it is. Yeah. And Thomas is played by Nicholas Hoult, and he has a very rich friend who's played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. More specifically, Aaron Taylor Johnson is the husband of his wife.
Which is
I'm so confusing. Okay, I'm gonna back it up for you. So Nicholas Holt's character, Thomas Hutter, is recently married. He is recently married Lily Rose Depp's character, whose name is Ellen Hutter. So Thomas and Ellen. Ellen's dearest friend is named Anna. Her husband, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, Friedrich, is very, very rich. How'd I do? They just got 2 little babies, and they seem to have everything. They have beautiful children. They have another child on the way, whereas Thomas is like, I don't even think we can afford 1 child.
Yeah, in his current situation.
Yeah, so this job is a big deal. Even though his wife, she gets like visions, and she has a very bad feeling about this. She thinks it's an extremely dangerous journey. She does not want him to go. She begs him not to go. He's like, we need this. This will change our lives, because he really feels like they need to have this upper class lifestyle that her friend's husband has been able to provide.
Zigma and Fairpoint have pointed out that they've been waiting all year for this stream for Horror Addicts. This is all year so far. And we got our first super chat of the year. Thank you, Zigma.
Thank you.
Excellent, brother. Appreciate it. So, yeah. Hutter is...
Oh, Zigma, I cheers my dirty Shirley to you.
Hutter is trying to make something of himself. If he goes and lands this sale, like, basically, it's good things for him. He's going to get a pay raise. You know, him and his wife need that. So they can eventually buy their own house, and everything will be well off. And it's very Dickens when he goes in there, like, being told what he has to do by his Scrooge-like boss. But
one thing I will also, because you mentioned that scene, pay attention. There's lots of little details hidden here. So lots of little details hidden, like, you know, in the costuming and stuff like that. There was a detail in that particular scene I noticed, and I was like, that's interesting. I wonder why they chose that. And then you find out later on why. So the biggest thing I would say that stands out about this movie to me, though, is the cinematography. Yeah,
it's beautiful. Like, there's all kinds of shots that they really just nailed. I think the costumes are overall really good, like, believable for their time.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the cinematography. Okay. It's gorgeous. So one of the things that they do is the night scenes are pretty much desaturated. They're like in black and white. And they're gorgeous. They do a lot of beautiful stuff with like snow falling. Eggers has just an incredible eye. I think one of your favorite scenes, it's a scene in the trailer where you can see the shadow of Orlok's hand.
Going over the city.
Well, you can see it going over Ellen.
Yeah.
Which is really, really neat. Just really beautiful visuals. I also did like the homages to the 4 Nosferatu and Dracula movies. One of the best scenes in Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula, which is something that he borrowed from Black Sunday. Everything borrows from everything, everybody. Is when the horses come, when Orlok's horse-drawn carriage comes. It's
giant
just
Clydesdales.
And it's really, really creepy. And that's what this movie has. It has so much atmosphere.
It's there to take him the rest of the way to the castle, and it's just great. I love his interaction with the little village before that. I mean, it's the same story that's been told lots of times, and other movies, not even outside of the story, have borrowed from that, where you're going to the castle? Oh, good luck. We ain't taking you all the way out there. But it's just creepy, and Eggers has always done a great job with building up creepy suspense. I love The Witch and The Lighthouse, and he's always kind of wanted to dabble with that old school filmmaking, especially The Lighthouse, where it's, you know, shot in a much smaller ratio, and it's black and white. This
isn't a different aspect ratio, too. It's not the same as The Lighthouse, where it's not quite square. But
yeah, but he's always experimented with that. He obviously has a love for old cinema, and I felt like he was pretty much one of the right people to tackle something like Nosferatu. So
yeah, agreed. He's incredibly talented. You get an idea of kind of that black and white style, that desaturated style, which in some scenes is really beautiful because there might be fire, so you have a little bit of color, but it's not cheesy. It looks natural because at night things are desaturated, but you can get that from the poster. Addressing some of your questions, Farpoint wants to know, is it played straight or is it larger than life, kind of fantasy-ish?
I feel like it was supposed to be played straight with a little bit of that German expressionism, but sometimes I feel like it does go a little over the top, and I don't know if that was intentional or not, but
I feel like it is played straight. Nobody's trying. There's no attempts at humor in the film. This is based on a silent film, though. Like I said, it does take liberally from the 70s one, but it's based on the original film was a silent film. In silent film era, because you can't hear the actors, they have to really overdo it. Plus, these actors were stage trained, where you have to act for the guy up in the nosebleed seats. So that's what they're working from. And I think the actors, I'm assuming the coaching was to be similar to the silent film, to do a lot with facial expressions, to do a lot with their bodies. That's what we see a lot in this. I think sometimes it does come off like a little too much because we do have sound and music and all these things that original silent film didn't have.
Yeah.
But the intention is to be deadly serious.
That was what I felt. But like I said, sometimes it did get over the top. I don't think it was intended to, but sometimes it did, and it kind of took me out a little bit. I think Bill Skarsgård is perfect for someone who you want to just show expression and face. Though this wasn't his best at doing that, because I feel like they kind of did find that limit of what too much makeup on him kind of hides him. But...
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much about how he looks, because obviously the trailers and stuff for this are intentionally keeping him obscured and in shadows. But you can't tell it's Bill Skarsgård.
It could be almost anybody, and that is a bit of a downer. That's one of the things I felt was a flaw. I felt like they should have used him more, because he is so good at expressing himself facially and acting-wise that I felt like, oh, dang, they finally did put too much on him where it could be anybody.
You really honestly can't tell it's him, whereas like if you look at his performance in It with Pennywise, he does have a lot of makeup on, but he's able to express and emote so much through that. And in this, I really feel like he's doing some great stuff with his voice. He is very talented. He's doing the best he can, but I do think the makeup is a hindrance.
Yeah, which was a bit of a shame. But otherwise, I think the costumes and just the way everything else looked was great. His costume was one exception. I felt like, maybe a little too much.
I did like that it felt realistic in the sense that, one of the things that's odd, this is just a nitpick here, the film is set in Germany, just like the Nosferatu, just like the 70s one, which works in the original one because they're German. That's why they moved it to Germany, because the original story is set in London. In the 70s one, they're also German with Klaus Kinski. This one, they have all people doing English accents. So I really do not understand why they're all Frau this, Frau that, and saying it's in Germany when they should have just moved it to England. Yeah. Minor complaint there. Minor complaint. Fairpoint asked if the aspect ratio was to do it stylistically. I feel like when a director, and my husband's a director, so he could probably weigh in on this. I feel like when a director is setting up a shot, they're looking at that frame, and he's using that entire frame. Like, he's doing it to where, Eggers is doing it to where, like, if you pause the movie, that could be a snapshot. That could be something on your wall, and I think he is very successful at that. I think his eye for this movie was just that ratio. Honestly, you can't even really tell that much. It's slightly in more from widescreen. I didn't think it was super noticeable or called too much attention to itself.
Yeah, they clearly wanted to do a modern take on it, but I feel like maybe some of that ratio and stuff was just to give it that kind of old vibe, but overall still wanted it to look beautiful and as modern as possible with their effects and stuff. And there's lots of blood, there's lots of spooky shadows, and I feel like the lighting and everything is just to capture all of that as most beautiful as possible. So with that ratio in mind, I think that's just kind of what he went for.
And he's working a lot with like the shadows and stuff too, and the light playing on people's faces. I feel like he intentionally got people with very strong bone structure, like Lily Rose Depp, because he wants those shadows on their faces to make them appear more gaunt, to be really dramatic. Zigma says, is this the new one or the one from a long time ago? So the original silent film was in the 20s. Then we have the Bela Lugosi one from 1931. Then we got one in the 70s, and then we got one in the 90s. That was a remake of Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola. So this one came out, it opened on Christmas Eve or Christmas, one of the two, this year. So by Robert Eggers, who did, who did The Witch and The Lighthouse. So this is his, and The Northman, that's right, we haven't watched that one yet. But yeah. So he's worked with Skarsgård before.
And this is the first time I've really kind of seen Lily Rose Depp, like, be a lead, like, other than Yoga Hosers.
She did that movie, or the show, The Idol, that everyone hated. I didn't watch it, but I watched some videos about it. But, I mean, she's talented. But
I mostly know her from Tusk and Yoga Hosers. And I liked her a lot in Tusk. I felt Yoga Hosers had its problems, but it was cool to see her and Harley Quinn Smith take the lead on something, and this is as far as I've seen the first time she's been like that leading role since then. I know she's done plenty between then, but it was nice. Nicholas Hoult, I was just confused because I thought he was playing Renfield, and he wasn't playing Renfield.
Yeah, he's done a lot of these kind of because he's done Warm Bodies and he's done Renfield and he's done a lot in this kind of era. But yeah, especially with Renfield, it's kind of funny.
Also with William Dafoe, who was brilliant in this and stole the scene. Every scene he's in, he steals it. He's amazing. He knows how to act over the top without being over the top, if that makes sense. He gives so much to his fellow actors when his performances. But it was funny because it's like, wasn't he Max Schreck in Shadow of the Vampire? So he was playing a real Nosferatu, pretending to be an acting Nosferatu. And in this, he's the guy trying to hunt Nosferatu.
I turned down the mic a little bit, so let me know if that works for you. Yeah, a lot of them have experience with vampires and Nosferatus I feel like since we can use Dracula in the plural, we can use Nosferatu in the plural. Yeah. And Skarsgård, the first thing I ever saw him on was playing a vampire in Hemlock Grove. And of course, his brother is very famous for being Eric Northman in True Blood. They have an exceptionally talented cast here. And so here's the problem when you have a really exceptionally talented cast. Sometimes, Lily Rose Depp, she has not done much. Yes, she is, Johnny Depp's daughter, but for her career, she has not had that much, and certainly not much like carrying a film, and she does really have to carry this film. Mm-hmm. It's, I think, really daunting to act against somebody like Willem Dafoe, he's incredible. He's able to work with this language in such a way, because this is old school language. Mm-hmm. It's very old English. And he is able to do it, and he emotes so much. He connects with every single actor, and he is never over the top. It's like he just knows exactly where the line is, and then he hits it. Mm. He can be sincere. He can be excitable. He can be a little funny. Willem Dafoe is honestly fantastic in this. Even though it's a smaller part, I almost want to say, like, his job in this was even better than The Lighthouse. Like, in The Lighthouse, he's just at an 11 the whole time. But he's doing so many different things in this. He's tender. He's, fatherly. He's kind of basically the Van Helsing in this. Nosferatu. But I think he's really, really great. The other person who really blew me away as far as like, holy shit, get this man some better roles, Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Kraven the Hunter?
Insane. I first saw this kid, it was something before Kick-Ass, but the first thing I noticed him was Kick-Ass, and obviously he's been Quicksilver, and he's done all these roles.
It's in the Godzilla movie.
He's an incredibly talented man. He needs better roles. I hate to say it to Nicholas Hoult, because I do love him. I think he's very talented. Aaron Taylor Johnson should have had that part. He is so good in this part. With being very emotional, being like shouting, crying, but never being melodramatic. You entirely feel what he is feeling, which is what a good actor does. They make you forget that you're watching a movie and you're just seeing a person express feelings. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I didn't get that from Lily Rose Depp or Nicholas Hoult. I felt like they were on stage and they were giving a performance, and it was a good performance. But I still felt like I was watching a performance. And so I really kind of wish Aaron Taylor Johnson had gotten that lead role. And I don't want to shit on Lily Rose Depp because, like I said, she's doing a great job. But I felt like she was really detached from her fellow actors. She was not sharing the screen with them. Yeah, like I felt like she was on stage. Mm-hmm. It was a stage-type performance. I think somebody like maybe Anya Taylor-Joy, who was in The Witch, who is good at an understated performance, would have been better. And like I said, this is no shade to either of those actors. The problem is with this movie, you have very, very melodramatic language. You have really expressive visuals. You have a lot of music. You have a lot of costumes. We're already getting a lot of stimulation, and so we really need an actor who's able to play with this language and this like intense emotion and able to make it subdued so that it feels real. Because already we're going to feel disjointed by them speaking in a way that's so different than us and dressing in a way that's so different from us. At least that's my take on it.
So what you're saying is Lily Rose was just a little out of her depth. But and
first dad joke of the year.
Nicholas Hoult, I actually think he did good, especially in the beginning, because he was kind of like this bright-eyed, bushy-tailed.
You told me, you messaged me that it was too loud, so I turned it down.
I felt like Nicholas Hoult was doing great in the beginning because he was like this people pleaser. He wanted to please his wife. He wanted to please his boss, and he was like stepping into something you could tell he wasn't ready for. And I felt like that was very real. As the movie goes on, I don't know how well his performance like really held up. It wasn't bad by any means, but the same way as like I would say about Keanu Reeves in that Dracula movie from the 90s. I love it.
Ford Coppola.
Yeah, I love Keanu Reeves. He's an amazing actor, and he's showed me that he has so much depth, and he can be like, you know, sad, he can be happy, he can be romantic, he can be all kinds of things. He's got that. But in that Dracula movie, I never once felt that he belonged to that time era, and that's how I kind of feel about Nicholas Hoult here. Like, I just was having a hard time buying it that he was from the 1800s. Like, it just, I don't know. It got a little weird towards the end.
I think the other thing you really need, because you guys know, this is the story of Dracula. Now, the reason why it's Nosferatu, if you want backstory that you probably already know, but let's refresh for the whole class. The people who made the original Nosferatu, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the director, did not have the rights to Bram Stoker's novel. Mm-hmm. So they changed the name Nosferatu. They changed it to Count Orlok. They changed all the names of the characters, but it is point for point Dracula. Yeah. So this is why the Bram Stoker estate, his widow, Bram Stoker's widow, sued them, and she had every single copy of the original Nosferatu destroyed.
That she could find.
Thankfully, somebody had it in a private collection, and that is why we have it to this day, which is just a blessing.
Yeah.
But that is why the names and stuff are different. It is, though, the same story.
Yeah.
So, as you know, this movie is this novel, it's always had degrees of romance in it. Now, that can go up to higher points in like the 90s when they think they really ratcheted up that romance. Mm-hmm. But there is definitely a kind of romance between Ellen's character and Nosferatu. And then there's obviously the Jonathan Harker, or in this case Thomas Hutter character, and Ellen. So, you know, they're newly married. We really need to feel that chemistry. And in this, I don't think they had it. I think even with Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder, they had it. Mm-hmm. Which, another fun bit of trivia, they were actually legally married on that because they had a real priest do it and they did whole vows. So they think to this day they're still legally married. But they had wonderful chemistry. I feel like Lily Rose and Nicholas Hoult, like, they're so concerned with their performances that they're not acting to each other. Mm-hmm. But they're still doing a great job. Like, if you saw this as a play or something, or whatever, it would be fantastic. The problem is they have extremely talented actors in this group, and then by comparison, you can see the flaws.
Yeah, William Dafoe, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and even Emma Corrin, like, kind of raised that bar.
She is fantastic. Who is she? I've never seen her in anything before, but she is fantastic. That is the best friend character.
Yeah, Anna
She's
Harding.
Wonderful.
And,
honestly, she could have been.
She's Xavier's sister.
She, I guess her most prominent thing is she was Sandra Nova in Deadpool and Wolverine. Yeah. And if you watch The Crown, she plays Princess Diana. Yeah. But she's very talented. I think she could have honestly probably done the lead. And another thing in defense of Lily Rose Depp, though, now, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't remember this being a plot point in the silent film. But in the 70s one, it is established that Ellen has premonitions of a sort. She is able to kind of foretell when something bad is going to happen. And she has, in all of 4 stories and the novel, she always has a psychic link with the Dracula Nosferatu character. So for that reason, because they really focus in on that in this adaptation, I do think, to a degree, she needs to be kind of off from everybody else to show that she's other. Yeah. Which is where I think Nosferatu is able to kind of prey on her. Is she's so other. She does not fit in. Like Aaron Taylor-Johnson's character, you know, he's just like, he wants to get rid of her. He does not want her in his house, but it's his wife's best friend. Mm-hmm. She's
best friend's wife. So.
And she says her whole life she's been other, and she's never fit in. It wasn't until she met her husband, which again, all the more reason I really wish we had that stronger chemistry between them. But it's not bad. No. It's just not great.
It's just the other ones have raised the bar a little too high for them to kind of keep up. That's all it is. And then, yeah. Anyways.
Sorry, did I ramble off too far?
Kind of forgot where I was going with that, but
sorry.
It's all good. Anyways, so I get kind of lost on what happened. I think that was what the question, like, in a sense. I don't believe that they had so much. They have a psychic link confirmed in the black and white one, but she does like have some sort of premonitions and faints while she's waiting for Thomas to return to her, like she's overwhelmed. In this, it seems like there's a lot more of a connection. And that was the one thing that this movie might have done a little bit more by itself than other ones. I don't want to go into a lot of the details about that. I want to urge you to see it for yourself. But her and Count Orlok do seem to have a more of a connection than they've ever had before.
Now, something I want to point out, because I think a lot of people haven't seen the 70s one. I only recently watched it on Joe Bob Briggs, and it is fantastic. It's really, really good. The one that stars Klaus Kinski. So there's one Nosferatu remake that came out in the 70s. It was German, but they speak English. It's really, really good. And I feel like more so than any of the other adaptations, even the original silent film, Nosferatu is borrowing from that. Because that psychic link is in there. And then another little thing that you might not know about Nosferatu is in the original silent film, one, it was the first time a vampire was killed by sunlight. Because that's how the movie ends. It does not happen in Dracula. That happens in Nosferatu. That's one of the big differences. But the reason why Nosferatu in the original silent film, I'm not telling you about this movie, in the original silent film that came out in the 20s, I'm spoiling a movie from the 20s, it's public domain. The reason he is killed by sunlight is they didn't have an ending, really. And so it was just like, well, he's just going to be killed when the sun comes up. And then the 70s one did a really beautiful job of expounding on that idea. And they gave their characters a lot more agency.
Yeah.
And this one has kind of taken the ball from the 70s one and is running with it, which I think is really cool.
It crawled so it could walk so it could run, basically. In the silent film, his own obsession is his undoing, and then they kind of made it like intentional later, and now there's even more of a connection and more of a plot and a plan with all that. And I love it, how it's evolved. Also, when you say Nosferatu just kind of ended, and they're like, oh, well, sunlight killed him, and that was the first vampire to like, oh, he'll be killed by him. It's always kind of implied that creatures of the night are weaker in the sunlight, and that's why they're creatures of the night, but it was Nosferatu that kind of like said, oh, it'll straight up kill a vampire. However, I love that Shadow the Vampire, once again with William Dafoe, they were like, well, it ended like mysteriously like that is because he really was eating the cast and they had to like stop filming and like someone else edited their film together when they were all eaten by a vampire.
And what's interesting about Shadow the Vampire is that's based on a very real belief a lot of people had when the original Nosferatu came out. It was so scary. It scared the shit out of people. It's still scary to this day. It holds up, guys. It holds up. Max Schreck was so believable in the makeup in the original 1922 silent film. People believed he was really a vampire. They couldn't believe that makeup could accomplish that look. And so that's what Shadow the Vampire is. It's like, what if he was real?
And people didn't keep records the best in the 20s. Plus, with the lawsuit and the destroying of the film and all that, a lot of them kind of were hard to like hunt down. Eventually they were, but it's like a lot of people who worked on that movie seem to vanish in real life, so that's one of the reasons why it kind of led to that legend of, well, maybe it was a real movie and they were eaten, and hence Shadow of the Vampire. But
I mentioned the other two Nosferatus, so I just wanted to give you guys a little more details about it. So the original one, if you haven't seen the original Nosferatu, it was from 1922, directed by Werner Herzog. Hopefully I'm not butchering that. Wait, no, that's the 70s one. The original one from 22 is directed by F.W. Murnau from 1922. The 70s one is by Werner Herzog, and that one stars Klaus Kinski and Isabelle Adjani, who's fantastic in The Possession. If you haven't seen that, she's also fantastic in Nosferatu. I think she's honestly one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen alive. Truly cannot say enough good things about that one. That one's from 1979. Both of those original ones I think are still on Shudder. And I think it doesn't matter which one you see first. They're all different adaptations that I think are all valuable for different reasons. But absolutely, if you see Nosferatu and you love it, you need to go see that 70s one. And if you want an idea, honestly, as to whether or not you're going to enjoy this new 2024 one, just snuck in there right at the end of 2024. If you want an idea as to whether or not you're going to enjoy it, watch the other two. I will say the original 1922 one's a little slow in places. It's a silent film, guys. But especially the 1979 one. If you don't like that movie, you're not going to like this. This is a more stylistic version of that movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. The original Nosferatu was the first movie I ever streamed from Netflix.
Nice.
Before that, it was just they send you the discs, and then they had a website before apps on TVs and phones and video games and all that stuff. But I remember like they had a couple of movies on there that you could stream for free on the website, and I'd already seen most of it from other things, but I wanted to like watch it. All the way.
And I would say, as far as if I was going to, and I'm counting out the Dracula right now. There's the Dracula ones. It gets too confusing. If I'm talking about the 3 Nosferatu movies, they're called Nosferatu. I would say visually, the most stylistic one, the most visually pleasing one is this new one. It's gorgeous. I think the story is strongest in the 1979 one. And to this day, I still think our scariest Count Orlok is from 1922.
Max Shrek. Only to be rivaled mostly with William Dafoe, who was playing Max Shrek.
Don't want to digress too much, but Zygma mentioned we need a good werewolf one too. We saw the trailer before this movie for the new Wolfman, and I think it looks pretty good.
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it was the guy who did The Invisible Man, and that was
he did Saw as well.
Yeah, that was a new interesting twist to that. So I actually kind of want to see what his Universal Monster universe is going to play out to be, because so many other people who've tried to revive that have failed hard. So
that's honestly something I want to ask you about, because a lot of people have issues with remakes in general. And in my opinion, the best example ever of remakes done well are the Universal Monster movies. One, they're all adapted from novels. Mm-hmm. Some of them, that was not the first adaptation. Some of them, there were silent films that came beforehand, like with Dracula, and a lot of them. But then, even though I think those movies are damn near perfect, Hammer in England redid all of them, and they're different but equally good.
They're amazing. I feel like underrated, sadly.
I guess the reason I brought it up, before I lose my train of thought, the reason I brought it up is it's an example of how you can remake it and have it be just as good. But the biggest reason to remake it is it shares it with a new audience. Because obviously the Hammer films came out during the 60s and 70s, which is very different than the 30s. So it's like the children of the people who saw the original one can now watch this and enjoy it and be afraid the same way their parents were. And I think for a while there we were kind of missing those really quality remakes. We got a few in like the 90s, but not many. So I hope we're kind of getting a resurgence with those classic stories, because I think they're fantastic.
The Fly and The Blob and The Thing, I feel like the 80s was like peak remake like territory in early 90s. It's been a while since that, and I don't think we need to remake stuff that was made in especially the late 80s necessarily, because I feel like that was just great. Not a lot has changed. I mean, CGI has gotten better, but I don't really care about CGI all that much.
See, the thing is with the 80s, with the exception of a few, it didn't touch those classic stories.
Yeah.
The 80s was really kind of doing its own thing. Mm-hmm. I think what works with like Dracula and all these are stories that existed in book form a long time ago. These are timeless. They have been proven to be timeless. So when you take something that hasn't had that timeless quality and then you remake it, like Cabin Fever, it's like, huh? That was 5 years ago. That's not timeless. Dracula is timeless. Mm-hmm. You can remake this story a dozen different ways. That's why we have so many Draculas. It's a timeless story. People love this story. And you can play with it. And people are not going to get upset because there's so many different Draculas. Same thing with the Wolfman. Same thing. I would like more Creature of the Black Lagoon. Play with that some more. But these stories have already proven to have a very good audience. So, we should keep remaking them and introducing them to new generations, because in a way it's a lot like, when people would sit around the campfire and tell stories. Yeah. Their stories passed down from parent to child and generation to generation. And the story of Dracula, I think it's cool that it's continued to be revived, at least every 20 years or so.
Exactly. And as you were saying, a lot of these older movies, and it's the 70s, the Hammers did it, and the Nosferatu we were talking about, the vampire, that was also in the 70s. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the Hammers and that Nosferatu are very underrated. They're really good remakes, but a lot of people didn't see them, especially nowadays. So I'm happy with some new remakes like this Nosferatu, because it'll get people talking again. Not enough people are talking about the 70s one. A lot of people hadn't seen it. We hadn't seen it until Joe Bob played it.
And sometimes a lot of what happens is, we mentioned Robert Eggers was talking about how it's cool. There's a Nosferatu joke in SpongeBob. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of kids knew about it, but hopefully seeing this will make them want to go back and watch some of the other ones. If they enjoy it enough, they'll go back and watch the originals. But even if this is your only Nosferatu, I think this is a good one. The idea, I think what you're really striving for with a remake is to make a modern day audience feel the way that 1922 audience felt, where they were horrified. They thought it was real. I don't know, for somebody who's never seen the Nosferatu movies at all, like how that's going to make them feel, but I think this movie does a really good job, as good as can be expected.
Yeah. And honestly, I would like another Phantom of the Opera, but I would like them to remake that old silent one. Like, not, I would like that with the stylization of this Nosferatu. Like, kind of do this update to that. Because I thought this movie was beautiful. Like, it sounded great and it looked great. The acting was mostly good. There's just a few scenes that I thought were just a little, they took me out of the movie. But other than that,
everybody was good. There was a few people who were outstanding. I do think different casting could have made everybody outstanding, but somebody being less than outstanding is not a dig at them.
No.
Everybody was good.
And it wasn't even so much the acting. There's like maybe
chemistry.
The chemistry and the writing, but there's one scene I didn't like. I'm not gonna go what it is. Maybe you'll know what it is if you see it yourself. I thought that was just a little over the top and unneeded.
I agree, because we talked about this a lot. You have so many things that a lot of times when you watch a movie, especially if it's set in, you know, surroundings that you're familiar with, you know, a town and all that stuff, you know, in America, you don't pay attention to that stuff. A lot of stuff in this movie is very unfamiliar. So you already have a lot going on that's going to be stimulating people. And the scene you're talking about in particular, I blame a lot of that on the writing. I just think it was a little too melodramatic. You can dial it back. And for anyone who's like, well, it's based on a 1922 movie. Yes, the silent films did overdo it a lot because they had like these little silent film cards. But Shakespeare was around before any of that. And Shakespeare knew when to dial it up and when to pull back. So from the very beginning of our greatest stories, you know, that has always been a skill. And I do think, as good as he is, sometimes his writing is a little melodramatic, and that's going to really work for some people. For us, in one particular scene, it did not. Yeah,
one bad scene. I feel like the movie is riding really high. There's one really awkward plateau, but then it goes back to being high again. So overall, I really loved it. Just, damn, there was, like, it's like this Vincent Price class throughout most of the movie. And then one random, like, Tommy Wiseau moment, and then back to Vincent Price. I was like, what? Did anyone else notice that?
It's kind of funny that Sigma mentions that Nick Cage was a good vampire, because Nick Cage was the Dracula in Renfield. So, Dracula and Nosferatu change one very, very big thing. In Dracula, Jonathan Harker, he goes after Renfield has gone. So Renfield's already fucking crazy. So when you see Nicholas Hoult play Renfield, he's almost doing the same part, because Renfield was the original one who went. He's almost doing the exact same part as he's doing in this one, where he's kind of the Jonathan Harker character, because Nosferatu kind of merged them a little bit more. There is a Renfield character, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah, there's a Renfield in this movie as well, and it was alright.
But he's not the one who goes to
the
Carpathian Mountains and all that stuff.
No. They do switch that up a bit.
Yeah, so this one, I don't know. It's different. But I thought it was really good. I liked the music. I thought, you know, everything looked really nice.
I'm planning on owning it at some point, but I say see it in the theater if you get a chance. That's the best way to probably enjoy this at the moment.
With the big sound and everything, like, yeah, what they're doing with sound, visuals, all of that, I think you're going to get the full experience if you see it in the cinema. And like I said, you don't have to have seen the originals, but you're going to see a lot of little nods if you watch, before you go into this one, if you watch the 1922 Nosferatu, the 1931 Dracula, then watch the 1979 Nosferatu the Vampire, and the 1990, I want to say 1994. But the Francis Ford Coppola Dracula, that's where he's borrowed a lot from those four movies. So if you've seen those, you're going to see a lot of the kind of little homages that Eggers has put in. But obviously, you don't need to see them to appreciate the movie.
Yeah, you don't. You can watch them in any order, but I do suggest you go out and see all of them. So
I think so. I think actually that's a pretty good movie night right there is watching all of them.
Have a Nosferatu slumber party marathon, right? And have all of them over.
And people have such good different opinions, and it's honestly one of those situations where I don't think anybody's wrong. You know, I'm of the unpopular opinion. I love Bela Lugosi in the 1931 Dracula so much, but you know, a lot of people, that's not their favorite. Like, a lot of people even prefer like the Spanish one to that one, and I just think Bela Lugosi is so magnetic. I love that one, but with any of these movies, they're all fantastic and they're all worth watching. And you know, we have a rare opportunity right now to have one that's, I think, belongs on the same shelf as all the rest of them in cinemas right now. So absolutely check it out.
I would say I kind of like the Spanish Dracula for like the setting, but I love the acting better in the American one. And it's maybe just because I'm in
I think
English.
the story is a little better in that
but
Spanish one too. But I just love Bela Lugosi.
Yeah.
I do think we need to give you some trigger warnings. It's 2025 now, guys. All right, y'all need your trigger warnings. So here are some things you're going to see in the Nosferatu one that you may not be prepared for if you've only seen the other two.
Yeah.
This movie drops dong.
There's actually equal amount of nudity for everyone.
So yeah, you're gonna see full frontal, male and female, lots of boobs, lots of blood. I mean, it's a vampire movie, guys. Come on.
An interesting method of sucking, which is very
Yeah.
very audio, and I didn't like that sound, but not in a like I hate this movie, don't like the sound. I just like, whoa, that's disturbing. Like that creeps me out literally. So it's actually a good sound.
Again, it's a great job they did with the sound design. They find every way to get under your skin, and the sound design is definitely one of them.
It's gonna make some skin crawl just hearing that noise.
This movie did such a good job with the sound and the visuals that you could almost smell parts of it. It was so good. But yeah, I'm gonna give you trigger warnings for that, and if you are somebody who is squeamish about people being killed horrifically and stuff like this, it's probably not one for you to watch.
Nobody is safe, and I love that about it. Like, it doesn't matter who you
Yeah,
are.
let's put it that way.
Doesn't matter what your role is in this movie. You are not safe. Like, you could end up a victim. I also love the use of the plague rats in this one. Like, I feel like Nosferatu's always done pretty well with adding those plague rats. But
fun story, though, because audiences were so horrified by the original silent film Phantom of the Opera that had rats. The rats really upset people. In the 1931 Dracula, they have possums.
Not in the Spanish version.
They're adorable.
Like I said, I like the Spanish version for a lot of reasons, but I do prefer the original American version.
Fat was convinced by the full frontal and slurping. Yeah, so yeah, this movie has all the nudity, slurping. It's very, very sexual. There's like gyrating and stuff. Like, it's very in your face. And I'm not going to tell you who. There's a lot of children in this movie, but children are killed. Nobody is safe.
Animals are killed, children are killed, everything can be killed.
All the things are killed.
Doesn't matter.
This movie is really trying to push the envelope.
Doesn't matter if you're like, you know, a small part or a big part. You're at danger, and so it has a good body count for a Nosferatu movie. Let's put it that way. And it's mostly on camera, where the old one, any of the body count was kind of like off camera for the most part. So.
But yeah, it looks fantastic. Sounds fantastic. I highly recommend it. Check it out in the cinema.
Yep. All right. Well. That's about all we got really to say tonight. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thanks for getting this year off started right. Hopefully I'm already working on some more videos that are coming down the pipeline. One of them is a Christmas video. If I go by the 12 days of Christmas, it's not quite late, but we're pushing it. So hopefully I'll get that out soon.
And over on my channel, Gory B Movie, I have my own channel, my whole own world over there.
Link
we
in the
have
description.
Stream tomorrow. We're going to be talking about the best horror books of the year. Or actually, just it's Strange and Unusual Book Club. So all the weird books of the year that we enjoyed the most.
Yeah. Get at it.
So it'll be tomorrow over on Gory B Movie at 7. I'm going to make that here pretty soon.
Cool. Killer Kayla, right?
Killer Kayla, yeah.
All right. So, cut.